Hello and welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the McConaughey at YouTube with another airbrush compressor review. I've been doing a lot of these 12 volt jobs that you can get off Amazon, eBay, all over the place. Tons of different products. They're all ranging from $50 to $100, different shapes, brands, advertised for cakes, nails and whatnot. And I'd like to go through every single one. Now the Royalmax or the King Max, the black square one, is the best that I've found so far, though I'll still keep getting them and retailing them on. We have seen this brand before. We have reviewed the BT-16 series, and that was one of the worst compressors we've ever come across. We now have the 16 one. It's a little more expensive, but not by much. Hopefully it should have better and more superior control. It is practically boxed very nicely, and which is a huge shame because this is ideal to put on a shelf in a retail capacity. I do resell these under the salt mines, and you get this quite smooth, very heavy, thick plastic case, power supply hole, as well as a proper screw thread 1/8 inch adapter instead of the rubber hose. I hate the rubber hose with a passion. Bit of a connector to take the airbrush connection. I throw these in to allow for Australian power. We have the power supply. It's double insulated, 12 volts, and it takes 100 as well as 240 volts. So this power supply as well as the compressor can be used out of any electrical outlet around the world without blowing or causing problems. A transformer is not required because that's exactly what this is. The airbrush we have is one of these micro jobs. It has a 0.3mm needle and nozzle, though on the downside the cup is absolutely tiny. Spirt Air. We have reviewed Spirt Air before, and the Spirt Air airbrush is not a bad little model itself. It is practically a hyacinth with a tiny cup welded on. You could swap the needle and nozzle for a 0.2, 0.1 and do really fine detailing lines. You may want to buy another airbrush to review the whole job or to utilize the job. One of those will only cost you about $15 to $30 extra from the same platform that you're buying this. Very standard 1.2 or 1.8 mil double-ended 1/8 inch cord, and our airbrush stand which clicks into place. Now we've also got a little booklet. It's all in English. It reads out very well. Instructions, all the specs, which will be in the in the description section, and a basic guide on cleaning, using it, and a full comprehensive guide on operation, airbrush, stripping, maintenance, thinning, everything. This is really good literature. This is probably the best airbrushing manifesto I've ever come across that's not been in Fine Scale Modeler magazine. And a bit of a Q&A, which is just solving problems if you have paint leaks and air leaks and all that sort of stuff. So the literature for a beginner is absolutely fantastic. If this boots up and sprays pretty well, I will definitely be considering putting this in my catalogue. There is nothing else in the box. Let's wire it up. So we've got the power outlet, plugs right in. The braided hose just screws right on one end. It doesn't matter which end goes into which surface. Stripping the airbrush is very standard and very easy. The awesome thing is you do have a flathead screwdriver at the bottom to take the thread out as well. Under no circumstances you really need to be doing that for maintenance. The airbrush needle is about shorter than standard. The standard hyacinth one bought on eBay would not be a problem, even if you have to chop down the end of it or just operate it without the back or utilizing a different back. This is the mechanism. The needle nut goes on the end, pinches the needle, and it goes backwards and forwards. Makes up of the spring and two halves. Be careful not to accidentally pull the spring back and just launch it out somewhere into the ether. That is very, very annoying. This component is our air valve. It has a tendency of clogging when you allow air or paint to flow backwards. So when you fill up the cup, you never pull the needle out, as paint is going to drip backwards and into the air valve. Standard trigger with a little bit of a brass end, and on the other end we have our nozzle. Now unfortunately this airbrush lot does not come with a nozzle wrench, so we can't remove it. You will need to buy one. Ophir sells them on eBay and Amazon. You get 2 for a couple of dollars, or 5 for just a tad more. Not a big deal, though if you follow my advice and buy another standard Heisting airbrush, it would come with all of that. Now just a quick note about the nozzle. When you take it out of the wrench, you use as little pressure as humanly possible. It's very tiny, it shears and leaves the thread inside. If that happens, I have a video on how to repair and deal with that. When we shake it, it does have a bit of a rattle, which is a tad concerning, but that would be the brass bit where the thread is there. That is a tad annoying, and the only aspect I really don't like about the Spirt Air, though that's alright. First thing I like to do is lubricate the internals with a Q-tip and push it all the way back to where the O-ring is here. There is an O-ring there protected by a metal case and a very small screw. You will have to take this out, but realistically you don't have to do that. Followed by, we get our assembly here. I like to pinch right on the thread. Lightly oil it up. Vaseline is a petroleum jelly. If any paint leaks backwards into the airbrush, it's going to mix in with the lubricants and shall not dry. Because if you think of 2 dry bare metal surfaces with something that's almost like a glue agent in between it, it's going to seize up really, really badly. And on top of that, the mechanisms are going to work so smoothly when it's all lubricated. You'll have so much more performance and ease in using it. On the proviso, you clean it properly. So we've just slightly glazed the valve, and we're going to just pop it right in the hole at the top. This takes a bit of practice, and we want to make sure that we can see it coming out the other side. It's not gone in properly, so we'll do it off camera. There it's in, nice and proper. And to test that, we put the air valve in, nice and tight, and it should have a spring back when you push down and up. Next we have the tongue, and we put it in the direction of the small tip up, and it looks like a bit of an S. We slide that in, and you pull it back. Adjust it slightly with the back of the needle if you must, and just let it to sit in there. Finally, we add this back here, and as you're pushing it in, you should see the tongue flip up and go right up against the trigger. Tighten it up, and it pulls backwards and forwards like that, absolutely perfectly. You see it all settle in the needle. You can lubricate the needle if you want. If there is any resistance, you do not force it. Just manipulate the trigger or something, and you push it until you see it coming out of the end of the nozzle. It's working quite well. I'm going to pull it back slightly, put the crown on, push it forward, add the needle nut, pull it backwards and forwards to make sure the needle's going backwards and forwards. Final assembly, we're going to flush thinner through it as to get any of the grease that's in this part of the airbrush forward, and we shall do a test spray. For the love of God, please ignore my dirty floor. That aside, now we've got an LED in the power supply, so we know things are working well. Haven't seen that before. The other end of the hose is attached onto the airbrush, nice and tight. The other end of the hose is attached onto the airbrush, nice and tight. Alright, a quick test. We turn it on, and it's already full of air because I've already tested it. It is a bit loud, but not too much. Nothing like any of the larger 240 volt or 100 volt compressors. It has an auto stop, which doesn't really happen on any of the other airbrushes. And it comes out gently at about short of 20 psi. And when you press shift, it goes a little lower and the pump is running less. This is not too bad. I'm fairly actually impressed with this. Not until we put some pre-thinned lacquer through it, and we'll draw some lines on a piece of paper. Alright, let's get spraying with the highest pressure first. That is smooth. The line is very, very small, and we don't have a lot of splattering. And let's go for the widest. I am actually very impressed with that. That is probably, we're going to go one step down. This is probably equal, if not ever so slightly better than the Royalmax. This does a finer line. So this is the middle setting. Dusts on nicely, and we'll go for the weakest setting, 1 LED. A little fuzzy, but the line is very, very sharp. This is a decent amount of control. Not too bad at all. So realistically, at a good thinning ratio, you can spray at the lower setting. I suppose if you're doing something a little more difficult, or if you're dealing with a higher output airbrush like a 0.5 mil or something a tad thicker, or primer, the larger one would work nicely. But yeah, this combination has my approval 100%. The airbrush cleans very quickly. Just a quick bit of a tip. You put your finger at the tip once you put a bit of thinner in, spray it out, wipe the cup with a tissue, push down, pull back. The air is not going through the front, it's going through the cup. Any sort of paint left over will stir up and make the thinner change colour. Spray it all out or tip it and keep repeating until the liquid inside is clear. Nice pro tip. Also pull the needle out and wipe it down as per the instructions. Closer look at the spray patterns, and you can see the gradient is nice and fine. Nothing really wrong with it. Pretty happy with that test pattern. You will have to remember, every time you use it, you have to drain all the air out, since it's an auto stop airtight rig. And you also have to dismantle it to make sure water vapor or water does not build up inside. That will destroy any sort of rings or washers inside this, and it will not be usable in a very quick period of time. As it has an auto stop, the pump is not constantly running, so overheating will not be as much of a problem. They take breaks in between changing color cups and whatnot, especially if you're buying an airbrush with a much larger cup than this tiny thing. Overall, with that advice, for a beginner, this is absolutely perfect. It's absolutely ideal. With the little bit of information that you're armed with this video, a few spraying tips here and there, you'd be absolutely fine running and rolling with just what's in the box. I would recommend you getting a water trap. It does not come with that. It's one of these gizmos. You put it directly under the airbrush. Metal side first, plastic side down. Any sort of vapor going through, if you're in a humid, wet, rainy, whatever area, this will improve to a much smoother spray. And besides that, have fun, spray away, do lots of airbrushing, art, models, whatever you're doing, doesn't really matter. Once you start getting into it in the future, you could probably start really getting into some fantastic work and getting a larger airbrush, compressor, all that sort of thing. But to start off with, all for spraying on the go, in public, while traveling, absolutely perfect, absolutely ideal. Is this a good model? I'm really glad that I gave the benefit of the doubt. I bought this, I've tested it, because the 19 series was absolutely garbage, but the 16 series, really, really good. My faith in Spirt Air has been renewed, and will definitely throw my support behind this. Thank you very much for watching. As always, until next time, stay tuned for further content. I've probably got 1 or 2 of these 12-volt compressors to review, and I've done the whole set on this channel. How about that? Catch you guys next time.